Welcome, sir.
Thank you very much.
You wear so many hats and yet you have time for tennis and golf. How do you manage that?
Well, I mean, I don't know how I manage my time, but tennis I try to play at least once or twice a week because if I don't have any guests in my house in the evening, just 1 hour, I drop by at the Movenpick hotels and play 1 hour. That's why I play only singles. I play with a tennis coach and play single because that singles is better because it tires you quicker. So good exercise. Golf, I play at the Karachi Golf Club with my wife. So I play only 9 holes, but it's good, yeah.
Singles is always better, you know. So just keep that in mind. Keep that in mind. Tell us a little bit about, such a big company which is in so many sectors.
Yes.
And huge sectors.
Yes.
How do you manage that?
Well,
What are the challenges for a chief executive looking after, a multi-billion-dollar company,
yes.
spread all over the world,
Yeah.
in conflicting sectors, machines and this and that? How is that manageable?
That you have to ask our CEO of the Mitsubishi Corporation, but at this moment we have 7 business groups, such as energy group, machinery group, chemical group, and each group has a group CEO. So a lot of power is delegated to those group CEO who delegate some of their responsibility to divisional COO. So complicated organization, but the key word is to delegate the responsibility to the juniors. So basically that's how we manage the organizations. We have 6,000 people working all over the world, which is, well, could be big or small, but anyway, that's how we are managing the things, yes.
And how many emails do you get every day?
I can easily say 300 emails.
Every day?
Every day.
Okay.
Yeah. And so some of the emails I skip, obviously, but maybe the number of email I sent on my business is like at least 200.
You've been in Pakistan first from 98 to 2003.
Yes, 5 years.
5 years, and then from 2010 onwards.
Yes.
Why so long in Pakistan? People usually want to run away, no? And you want to stay here. What is it about this country, or what is it about Mitsubishi Pakistan that you want to continue to work here?
Yes. So let me briefly share with you my experience in Pakistan. So 98, I came to Pakistan, and I didn't come as a Mitsubishi. I was not stationed in the Mitsubishi Corporation Karachi, but there was a joint venture between Mitsubishi and Engro Group, Engro Polymer. At that time it was Engro Asahi Polymers, but anyway, Engro Polymers. And this joint venture was established in 97. So I happened to be the first secondment to this joint venture company from Mitsubishi Corporation. So 98 I arrived. At that time, actually, that everybody should be knowing Asad Umar. He was actually the CEO of Engro Polymer. So I was in a way reporting to him. I was the senior marketing advisor of Engro Polymer. So together with Asad Umar, I worked for 5 years in Pakistan. And I had a wonderful experience, not only working with Asad Umar, but all these, because Engro Polymer at that time, there were only 3 Japanese, rest are Pakistanis, and I totally enjoyed working with Engro Polymers and in the Pakistani environment. The 2003, the time came when I had to leave. I had a one-on-one close lunch with Asad Umar. And he asked that, so what is your plan? I said that I will go back to Japan, but I will try to come back to Pakistan again. And hopefully I will come back as a country head of Mitsubishi Corporation in Pakistan. And luckily, well, my dream came true, and in 2010 I was appointed and came back to Pakistan as a country head, why did I enjoy working with Pakistan is, I don't know. I mean, that there are so many differences in our culture between Japanese culture and the Pakistani cultures, but I found some commonalities. And I really feel that there are some chemistry going between Japan and Pakistan. So, well, as Vice Chancellor kindly introduced me, I was posted in Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Malaysia, Indonesia, but I somehow enjoyed my experience in Pakistan. That's why I kept on saying to my manager that sometimes I want to go back to Pakistan, and I was given that opportunity.
That deserves a round of applause, doesn't it? And just out of curiosity, of all the countries that you've mentioned, all are Muslim countries. Is that by coincidence or is that by design?
Yes. It's by design in a way. 1982, when I joined the Mitsubishi Corporation, the first session, the new entrants, like 150 of us who were same batch as me, I mean, joining Mitsubishi Corporations. There was one guy from HR department. Those people, you guys are lucky. I mean that from among you, we will be sending Arabic trainees and the Chinese language training. Those of you who are interested, raise a hand. And he said that, okay, well, I mean that you are shy, so you don't have to raise a hand now, but call me later. So I was thinking that everybody will raise a hand, because joining Mitsubishi Corporation, you have the first opportunity to go to either Muslim countries, I mean that Egypt or Taipei, Taiwan. So I thought that everyone was going to raise the hand. Actually, it turns up only 5 raised the hand. But nevertheless, I was sent to Egypt as Arabic trainee. So I studied Arabic 2 years in American University in Cairo. I mean that beside this Tahrir Square, if you have ever been to Cairo, I mean that there is American University in Cairo. I studied Arabic there. So by virtue of that, the company thought that, okay, this guy speaks Arabic, supposedly, so send him to Muslim countries. And first assignment was in Iraq, then was in Saudi Arabia. Well, then went on. I mean, it so happens that, yes, I've been in Mitsubishi Corporation like 37 years already. And 2/3 of my career was spent in foreign countries, and all happened to be the Muslim countries. One more thing is that I was stationed in Egypt, Iraq, Pakistan, so Nile civilizations, Mesopotamians, and the Indus civilizations. So if I ever get chance to go to China, then that I could kind of conquer the 4 civilizations. But I'm not quite sure. I'm old, so I'm not quite sure.
We're bringing the Chinese here.
Okay,
in
that's
a little
good.
while. So,
that's
so
good.
Just stay put here. So business people in Pakistan have a common complaint. They say that there's not enough level playing field. There are challenges, unnecessary challenges, especially from the government.
Yeah.
What are the challenges for a big company in Pakistan?
Yes. That's what I and also the OICCI, Overseas Investor Chamber of Commerce and Industry, happen to be the true representation of the foreign investors, kept on saying to Islamabad, level playing field needs to be established in Pakistan. But I'm not saying that level playing field between foreign investors and the local investors, but level playing field between those people who pay tax and those who doesn't. And everybody needs to be taxed. I mean that we are not saying as a foreign investor that our tax needs to be exempted. I mean that we are happy to pay the taxes because we are honored to have a business in Pakistan. So we don't mind. But if we have to compete with those people who doesn't pay tax, it's a struggle. And I think that I mean, that those good companies in Pakistan who actually pay the tax also have the same struggle. I mean, that level playing field, not between the foreign investors and the local investors. I mean, across the board.
So taxes would be one, so that everybody pays taxes. Any other challenges that you see for your industry or your company where you have to go through the government, so delays, for instance, approvals or bribes or incompetence, inefficiency, which slows down the growth of a company. So tell us some more about the challenges.
Yeah. People tend to talk a lot about corruptions, but maybe we are lucky. And also we talk among our overseas chambers colleagues, we are not, for past at least 10 years, we are not asked any bribery from the government. So in that sense, I mean that maybe, I mean that they think that, okay, people like Mitsubishi or General Electric, I mean, let's not do it. I mean, that they might be doing to somewhere, I don't know. But I don't feel a lot of corruptions in Pakistan when we are doing some project that everybody is cooperative, this and that. The challenge would be, I mean, that the little bit of the inefficiency in the government. I mean, that the documents sits in somewhere and would be missing in action somewhere. So, I mean that my poor colleague in the Mitsubishi Islamabad, their job is to check every day where is our application lies. Is it in the desk of the additional secretary or has it gone to the secretariat or this? So that's a little bit of the struggle we have. Time constraints. I mean, for example, one good example is that I've been in Pakistan like 10 years and so I must be clean. I mean that in the security wise, I mean, I haven't done anything nuisance. But still, if I want to go to Hunza, I have to get the NOC, which will take 4 months. In order to go to Hunza, I have to apply for the NOC. And NOC, I will apply for it. But why do I have to wait 4 months? Strangely, those people who sit in Japan, never been to Pakistan, apply for the tourist visa. He gets tourist visa in 2 days and joyfully goes to Hunza. So there are something like that keep on happening.
So either you could go to Hunza via Japan, we could do that.
Yeah, but for that I need to cancel my work visa, apply for the touring visa.
Or you could apply in the winters and then go in the summers.
Yeah,
so
that's true, that's true. But anyway, I mean, that this half jokingly, half seriously. If Pakistan were to boast resource in the tourists, who are the best advocate for Pakistani potential tourism industry? Those foreigners sitting in Pakistan. And if these guys have to wait 3 months to get the NOC, that is not right. And there are a few things that it's not only the efficiency of the government, but also some structure. I think Dr. Ishrat Hussain is trying to sort it out now, but you see that you have Ministry of Industry, you have a Ministry of Commerce, Ministry of Textiles, and you see that each ministry's, each mandate, if they even manage to optimize it, it's not necessarily be the total optimization of the Pakistan. I'm not saying that copy and paste the Japanese government, but in Japan we have METI, which is Ministry of Economy, Trade and Industry, which covers everything. So some reshuffling may need to be, I think, should be done in Pakistan.
You probably have worked with a lot of young people over the years.
Yes.
You know, young people here, young people in other countries.
Yes.
How would you compare a young Pakistani, for instance, who has an MBA degree or a bachelor's degree, and compare that person with, let's say, a young Japanese person? Would they be similar? You know, would there be a difference in their thinking? Give us a little bit of idea.
Yeah. I think it's not, the difference is not coming from the educational background, I see, more from the cultural background. And probably, I have never checked the statistics, but Pakistan has more MBAs than we have in Japan. But I think that 10% of the population goes to university in Pakistan. In Japan, 65% goes to university. So at least bachelor and above, 65% of the population is in Japan. And so we have more generalists, and maybe that makes a total difference. Maybe I'm not replying to your answer in direct manners, but that's, I checked the statistics also because that I was expecting that kind of the questions. France, also about 65% goes to universities. And Germany, about 67, 68% goes to university. There are other countries, like somewhere in the north, I think, I forgot the name, but North European countries, where more than 65% goes to university. So I have a feeling that maybe 65, 70% is right mix, while the rest goes to heavy vocational training. So that makes, hopefully, I'm not saying that Japan is best, but considering the France and Germany, I think that is kind of the mix that you need to shoot for. So I'm happy that Pakistan has a lot of MBAs, but you should have more bachelors.
And also, we lie, I think, 138th or 132nd on that education index out of 160 countries, 132nd. And Europeans lie in the top 40, 50. So it's not just the number of people, it's also how many generations we've done that. So they've done that for many generations, and we are just starting. When you hire young people, and there are many young people here, what is it that you look for in a person if you're hiring a young person? What do you look for? Many would come from the same university, many would be vibrant. How would you know in 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 interviews that's the person that you want, or this is the person you don't want? What is that thing or things?
First thing I look into is a spark in their eyes.
Do you see any spark in their eyes here? Suddenly,
yeah, a lot.
There you go. People just
now
woke
suddenly
up.
The eyes start to sparkling, but spark in the eyes. I mean, it's not scientific maybe, but whether the girl or boy who applies to our companies in the interviews look straight into my eyes, and how confident they are. I mean that I don't mind they being nervous. I mean that it's okay, but I don't say that you have to. I mean nervous is okay. I mean that you come to interviews, you have to be nervous, but at least whether you have spark in your eyes or, I mean that you can tell. That's the first entrance for me. I mean that not scientific, but I think that's something I look into.
Are you
other than which university you are from?
Are you a good boss? Do people who work with
you have to ask the Jawad, am I a good boss?
He will never tell the truth on camera. We're on camera.
In the open public. I may not be a good boss in a way because that currently a boss should not be shouting, right? I shout a lot. So maybe I'm not good boss. But more often than not, I shout because they don't deliver or bring about, which I think they can. I tend to dedicate people, and the keyword, I think that the key typical sentence which I make when I shout is that who has the ownership on this? This is typically being asked to question to, for example, Java. How many times have you been, I didn't like shouting you, but how many times did I say that who has the ownership on this? Because that if I dedicate some responsibility to my juniors, I expect that they hold ownership. So I have certain expectation that they can do it, I give them. And if they don't reverse, I mean, that means that either I'm overestimating their capacity, which I don't think I do, or they are not holding their ownership. That makes me a little frustrated. Like I get the feeling of betrayal, so I raise the voice. So I'm not a good boss.
Oh, he's not a good boss. So that's settled, Jawad, that's settled. And I think that's a very good question to ask, especially for the younger people. When you work, when you study, you go to the classes, whatever is happening in your life, who has the ownership? Do you have the ownership, or are you just passing on the blame? And that's a good question to ask. Just, hold that thought for a second. Slightly bigger thing, we've had other people, and I've asked them this question. I want to have your take on this. There's a lot of muddled thinking on the CPEC, the Pak-China Economic Corridor. Mm-hmm. Depending on, which side of politics you are, some people say, that's a great initiative, it's a great opportunity. Other people think that China would suck us dry and it's a bad deal. What's your opinion on the CPEC?
Yes. More often than not, when I get into these discussions and I meet so many people who say it's about CPEC as if they have another choice. I mean, unfortunately, Pakistan, well, it's not unfortunate, I mean, because it's any developing countries, you need to develop your infrastructures. And I think that those of you here, simple accounting, yeah? So in order to build your infrastructures, which means you have to build your asset, so other side, you have to have either debt, either equity. If you don't have equity, yeah, you raise your debt. Whether it's coming from China or US, doesn't matter. You have to increase your debt to increase your asset so that this asset can start generating the profit. So CPEC itself, unfortunately there is no other country than CPEC, China, to offer you that kind of the amount of the money you require to develop your asset. Well, of course, that you can keep on debating that whether this deal, that are we paying more interest or is it the condition is, but regardless, that you have, in order for Pakistan to develop, you need to build the infrastructure. So the question is not whether we go ahead with CPEC or not. The question is that after building the infrastructure, can you generate enough profit out of the asset you have and trying to pay out the debt? That's more like the question. People doesn't go. That they say that, okay, this Gwadar is coming and we are on the debt and this power stations is heavily on the Chinese debt. Actually, it is not. For the tower development, there are Chinese funding is coming. It's project finance. It's not, anyway. I don't like to spend 1 hour on the CPEC, but nevertheless, what I'm trying to say here is that you have to discuss on something else, which is, okay, we develop our infrastructure. How we are going to make Pakistan more export-oriented countries? And that's the question that you start asking before, but you are discussing on CPEC. Too much, to me. That of course that the better deal has to be made with China. That's no question about it. But you have to think a little bit ahead. Because okay, we will have an infrastructure. Then what? Yeah, that you have to start thinking right now because that if you are not mentally planned or mentally prepared. That okay, electricity becomes available, but then how we are going to use it?
And the other debate that people do, and they make sense, is, we need to spend more on human resource than on structures. And that's, that's a good valid point that the other side has. Tell us a little bit about education. You come from a first world country, a country that, that's fought world wars, and yet, they become world superpowers in infrastructure and machinery. 20, 30 years ago, everything that had made in Japan logo on it was like world class. How do you do that? How do Japanese do that?
I think there are two factors. One, I have to say the government played a great deal. Government. The government, just I said, the METI, they made proper industry policy. Okay, let's think about it. How should Japan, our economy should recover? So they picked a few industry, like steel industries, shipbuilding industries, automobile industries. So they decided, okay, these industries are driving force for Japanese economy to recover. Then they decide and they nurture, they protected these industry like anything. Unfortunately, in Pakistan, what is happening is that you don't have a proper industry policy. Yeah. So depending on who comes, I mean that one day all Pakistan something association visiting Istanbul, not Islamabad, and some policy was made. The next day, another association comes, and so it's very much in the patchwork. So you have to have an industry. I'm not saying is it going to be automobile or is it going to be the textile. I don't know, but the government has to make a proper industry policy and also stick to it. That's one thing. And the second is you rightly pointed out education is the key. You might have a lot of MBAs in Pakistan, but if you don't have this is leaders at LUMS. Some people say that Pakistan has enough leaders, but you don't have proper followers. And that's something needs to think about. We need to have a lot of leaders, capable ones, but also we need somebody who can actually have some designation from those leaders and actually implement those things.
We also have one more problem that we work 40 hours a week. Well, less than that, but on paper we work 40 hours a week. You know how many average Japanese worker works? How many hours a week? Anybody any idea? 80 hours a week. And they have a problem with that because they don't take time off. So it's difficult for people to get people stop working in Japan. So here we have to push people to work. They have to send them home. They don't want to go home. Why is that? Why? Why don't the Japanese just chill? Like we chill.
Yeah.
We chill.
That's good questions, and actually that's something that Japanese needs to improve, because that
we need to work less.
We need to work less. For that we need to improve our efficiency. Maybe we are very much inefficient. Many meetings, yeah. So for that we have, in order to make decisions, we have a lot of approvals to get it. So in a way, Japanese are very much inefficient. And we used to boast ourselves workaholic, but now workaholic is not cool anymore. And so that's, I think, we need to change. I think, yes, we need to be efficient more. So don't copy Japanese. I mean that, I think that it's not the question of how many hours you spend. It's output eventually. So we shouldn't be Japanese be boasting that we work many hours. I mean, that's not good. Yeah.
So there are some words that you want to teach us, some Japanese words. So let me see if I can pronounce this correctly. Hansei?
Hansei.
Hansei. What does that mean?
Have you ever, anybody who read the picture book or illustrated book called Lost in Translations? It's introducing many languages. One word which cannot be translated to the other part of the world. And my favorite at that paper book was the language of the Finland, Finnish word. I cannot pronounce properly, so I wrote it here. Oh, is it here? Oh, yeah. This is interesting. I need to share this. Finland, Finnish word, polonkusema. Polonkusema. I think I pronounced it properly. Polonkusema. Do you have any idea this means? It's the distance a reindeer can comfortably travel before taking a break.
And they have a word for that?
Yeah, they have a word for that.
Okay.
Polonkusema. I mean that reindeer, the distance the reindeer can walk without taking rest. And reindeer for Finnish must be very, very important. So, I mean that people must be knowing that Arabic, you have 100, 200 words to describe a camel. You have word for the male camel, sick camel, old camel, dying camel, born camel, all this. But the Finland, you have this. And it is about 7.5 kilometers. And so one polonkusema is 7.5 kilometers. But if you translate this word to 7.5 kilometers, it loses context. That's what I'm trying to say. And Hansei is the word which is very difficult to translate because it complies of the three concepts. First concept is to accept mistake. And second concept is simultaneously be ashamed and feeling of losing the dignity out of making such a mistake. And the third is never to make that mistake again, committing yourself. It comes in one word. I mean that it's not like accepting mistake. So for that's our Japanese word, which somehow represents. I mean that this. We don't do it anymore. There's harakiris and this. We die for maintaining our dignity. So Hansei is pretty much mixed to it. I think that it represents. There are so many countries whose culture does not encourage you to accept mistake, right?
Did you know, just little trivia, did you know that in the Urdu language, the words, how many words we have for the word love? Anybody, any ideas? 18. So scholars say we have 18 words for the word love in the Urdu language. So we are also pretty okay in terms of language.
That's nice.
Okay, one more difficult word. Ikigai?
Yes, that's the word. Ikigai can be translated as your reason of being alive, okay, or purpose of your life. But it's not really that. It's a mixture of four things, balancing four things. One is what you like, what you love to do. That's first thing. And second thing is what you're good at. Right? And third thing, well, don't call us economic animal, but is what you can be paid. And third thing is what society requires. So the perfect combination of what you're good at and what you love and what society requires and what you can be paid for, what you can be paid for, perfect combination. That we think that ikigai, we think that our life is a everlasting search over our ikigai. So I mean that you cannot say that, okay, I found the ikigai. I mean that before you die, you say that, okay, I think that my life, I think was worth it, ikigai. For example, I mean, you cannot miss out if you are if you are good at it and if you love it, and even if the society requires it, if you are not paid for, then that it's not sustainable, right? And if you are good at it, and if you are paid for, and if you require society, if it is required by society, but if you don't love this, I mean that you feel kind of the emptiness. And if you love it, for example, if you love it and if you're good at it, but if that is not required by the society, it's merely hobby, right? I mean that I play tennis, but it's not required by the society. So it cannot be my ikigai. So that's how we view. And I think that the Japanese pretty much continuously searching each other's ikigai.
That's fantastic and very, very complex. Time for one more word. Buto?
Boto.
Boto.
Yes.
Okay.
It's opposite of workaholic. I mean that the boto suru. I mean that do boto. We do that. It's literally meaning gazing long distance without actually looking at anything. So it's kind of you concentrate on one thing, but botto suru is just kind of I mean you are not thinking anything. And if you are not thinking anything, then that it's like computers. You start sorting out your memories, and then you become fresh. And the botto suru, botto, is actually was in this picture book, the Lost in Translation, the typical Japanese word.
Okay, two quick questions, and then we'll open the house if you have any questions. One is, what makes a good leader? You know, we ask this, and everyone has a different answer, and we want to have your answer.
Yes.
What makes a good leader, or a good follower for that matter? Like you said, we have too many leaders and less followers. What makes a good follower?
Okay. First, the leader. To me, leader has to do only three things: make decisions, face the consequence of the decisions, and grow the people. And if you make if you make the decisions, and if you face that consequence, and if you grow the people, well, I think that that's already you are the leaders. Follower, I think, is just I kept on saying, the ownership. Yeah, ownership. And maybe follower is not a good word, but own it. I mean that it's not following the order, but you have to think, you have to understand, or actually you have to be confident that what you're doing is right. If you feel that this is the right thing to do, then you start taking ownership onto it. So that's.
And these young people, some of them might be working, some of them might be in the job market, in the next few weeks, months, years, I don't know. What would you say to them? They want to get to the top really quickly. That I can tell you.
Yeah.
What would you say to them?
Yeah.
What do they need to do, and what is it that they don't need to do?
Yeah. One thing I can sincerely advise you is that don't go for shortcut. Don't go for shortcut. I mean, of course, I mean that if you can speed up, it's okay. I mean that, but don't shortcut. If you don't bypass, don't shortcut, because that will lead to, I can assure you, you get hit somewhere down the lines. I mean that, so step by step. I mean, younger generation may not be able to wait for 10 years, but don't go for a shortcut. If you want to, you want to achieve something in 5 years, just run faster. Yeah, don't jump. And life is tough. In school, it's not tough. I mean, that life is not tough. Life is tough. So eventually it's tough gets when the going gets tough, tough gets going. And you have to be tough. I mean, that there are so many challenges. People who cannot cannot take the challenges tends to take shortcut and think that they have achieved something which they are not. I mean, that you will only know it after 20 years, 30 years, but take my advice, don't do shortcut.
And I think one thing that this generation is very unfortunate with is that it's the generation, what some people call it, the generation of entitlement, where you feel that you are entitled to best things. You can order pizza immediately, you can have a phone, you can have access to anything that you want, and that's a really bad thing to have at a younger age. But anyway, any questions? Any young or not so young person? My friend at the back wants to ask a question. Keep the questions brief if possible.
Assalamu alaikum, sir. So my question is that recently Miniso, a Japanese brand, opened up in Lahore. And sir, the one thing I liked very much about Miniso was that when they return the bill to you, they put the money in both their hands and hand it out to you like a tray. That's something that's a very small gesture, but you know, it tells a lot about a culture. And so my question is that how can Pakistanis learn? Like how can the cultural exchange between Pakistan and Japan increase in this way? Because we really need to learn some of these positive things from Japanese culture.
That's a good question. That's a good question.
Thank you. First of all, I have to change your perception. Miniso is not a Japanese brand. Sorry, but it's reality. It's a Chinese brand. They say that it's Japanese, but somehow, I mean, that it's not Japanese. But actually, they try to copy well how the Japanese are working, and so I cannot really try to explain how Miniso is doing, but what I can tell you is that one thing I think is common among Pakistan and Japan is hospitality. Hospitality. And once friend, forever friend, right? Yeah. That goes same for the Japan and also shared by Pakistani. So if you consider that you are sitting opposite side, I mean that you being the customer, how you want to be treated, then you pretty much know how you should treat the other side. So I think that Pakistan has a capability potential because that I see so many. One thing that I loved in Pakistan is the sense of hospitality, and so I don't see why Pakistan cannot do that.
And also, I think when they greet people, the Japanese, and when they bend, the idea is to bend more than the other person. And, you know, Bulle Shah ne kaha na, hor bhi neema ho. So I think that's part of their culture. And here, it's become opposite. You know, we have to kind of stand taller than the other person. Asi akadi jane hain. Any other question from this side? Ji, wahan pe two more questions.
Assalamu alaikum. My question is that to what extent should we have this feeling of being shamed when we commit a mistake? Because I think there was a train incident in which the driver applied a brake and there was some adverse effects, and he was scolded by his boss because he did not want to repeat this adverse effects. And in the second instant, he really had to apply the brake, but he was so ashamed and so afraid that he could not, and it actually ended up in a disaster. So can you please tell me to what extent should we actually feel this feeling of embarrassment when we commit a mistake? Thank you.
Should we be ashamed when we make mistakes?
Yeah.
Yeah, we should be ashamed. Sure, that's all right. It's okay to be ashamed.
Yeah. It's okay. It's okay. One thing that I can share with you, I mean, that while hearing your questions, Japanese tends to think not how you live, but how you die. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? It's not how you live your good life, but it's how you die. Yeah, hopefully having certain pride and dignity of your life. So it's more tough in a way. I mean that living a good life is, and how you, I mean that, a few minutes before you pass away, you goes back to your past life and think, okay, was okay, or I did good things, or I didn't do bad things. So that's seems to be different, but it's a little bit of the quantum shift. If you think, how should we die instead of how should we live? Well, that's at least what Japanese, the way of thinking.
To die in dignity, and yeah, be shameful. Be ashamed when you make a mistake, but that's all right. That's okay. But we shame other people a lot. I think that's also a problem in our culture. We don't allow people to make mistakes, and I think we need to allow people to make mistakes. But yeah, I think we have time for one more question. जी, अच्छा यहाँ वाली भी जाग जाए वैसे कोई मसला नहीं है.
Yeah.
Maha would have a question. We'll take her the last. One more and then Maha.
Thank you so much, sir, for coming over here for us and sparing your precious time with us. I have a question about the society and culture of Japan. We have been listening for so long. We are also reading about it. I just want to know that is it true that in Japan, the kids have been taught how to respect for a few years, I think for 3 to 4 years, I think. And what's the impact in the future? Is that really any positive impact when they grow up? Thank you.
So they're 3 years old and that's when they're taught respect. Is that what you're saying?
When they are kids, when they start school,
okay.
They don't teach them physics, chemistry, mathematics, English or
okay.
language.
Okay.
I heard that they teach them only respect. Is it true?
No,
or
it's wrong.
if it's wrong?
No, that's wrong. That's Google for you. That's Google information. One last question. नबीहा बड़े गुस्से से देख रही है मुझे. शायद साहब ऐसा क्वेश्चन. जी जी, फ्रंट पीछे से काफी 2-3 सवाल हमने पूछ लिए. एक फ्रंट रो में भी जो आगे के नौजवान हैं उनको भी मौका मिलना चाहिए ना. जी शायद साहब.
Ando-san, thank you for being here. I would like that you just briefly tell our audience, at this moment, there's a lot of talk about promoting exports from Pakistan.
Yes.
Now, Japan at one time was the world's exporting country. And there were corporations like Mitsubishi, Marubeni and all. What role did they play to connect the manufacturing Japan with the rest of the world?
Mitsubishi Corporation opened the Karachi branch in 1954. We lost the war, 1948, 46, and so it took us some time to recover, but 1954 we opened the Karachi branch. At the same time, we opened the New York and the Londons, and so we, Mitsubishi Corporation, and as a trading house, be it Marubeni or Itochu, was actually the marketing arm of Japanese products to rest of the world. Also, we the first thing that we did in Karachi was to purchase cotton and bring it back to Japan, and we made a cotton yarn. And also later we exported the textile machinery. We started importing cotton yarn from Pakistan, and our further development of the textile industry. We grew together. What I'm trying to say here is that yes, that the trading house, Japanese trading house, acted as a kind of the spearhead of Japanese export. That's what we did. As far as if I have time, I can talk about how to enhance the export in Pakistan. Most probably, I mean that this is the biggest challenge you have: increase the export, because you have to at least produce something which is competitive and in good quality, which the rest of the world tempts to buy. That's long shot. I mean that you can give a subsidy to textile industry, but unless they don't produce something which other country attempt to buy, doesn't happen. So for that, the Islamabad has to take a big role, deciding on proper industry policy, which export industry to grow and nurture like anything, protect it. Forget about WTA or something like that. Unless your industry, local industry, until your local industry become competitive enough to the rest of the world. What the free trade means, I mean that you have to protect your industry. I mean that until some of your industry become export competitive. For that, maybe the good start is import substitutions. I mean that if you cannot produce something inside which you cannot consume in domestic, then that forget about exporting it. So you have to produce a lot of things which can be substituting the import. Yes.
That might take a long time, but I think hopefully we're on our way. Thank you so much for your time, Mr. Ando, and thank you so much for coming. If we can hear some claps from Mr. Ando. But don't go yet. We have a shield for you. And if I can request Babar Saab to please present the shield to Mr. Ando.
Thank you, Babar. It's all. Thank you.
And if I can take the liberty of requesting Babar Saab to also say a few words.
Yes.
No, it was, I've had the privilege of knowing Ando-san for as many years as he's been here. And it's been a very rewarding experience and a good friendship that we've enjoyed. But I can tell you that I've learned a lot today. Despite the fact that I've known you all these years, but I have learned from you new things which you have brought out. And I hope the audience here, my God, it's a full house here, shows how popular you are. And come back again.
Thank you.
And I'd also like to tell you that Mitsubishi Corporation has been, providing scholarship for students who go to Waseda University ever since this program started. And I hope it will continue forever in the future. Thank you.
Thank you.